Good afternoon. Welcome to Robots and Red Tape. I'm your host, Nick Shutt, here with my good friend, Oliver Sadorra. Oliver, if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and introduce yourself, your background and kind of what you're doing and where you are now.
Sure, yeah. I'd also love to talk a little bit about my company, Dark Wolf, and I really appreciate the opportunity, Nick. I'm looking forward to chatting. As you mentioned, my name is Oliver Storr. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at a company called Dark Wolf Solutions. So Dark Wolf, we are a technology service and solution firm. We're mostly focused on addressing some of the complex mission challenges that our national security customers are running into. And we have three what we call practice areas that really frame our core capabilities. So we have cybersecurity. Within that practice, we employ some of the best, most premier penetration testers in the country. Many of our pen testers are actively competing at competitions like DEF CON and B-Sides. They've also led conference talks, written papers, and really pushed thought leadership on areas like penetration testing, cyber vulnerabilities, and even some drone hacking. That's a really interesting topic that we have a very niche capability around. We also have a practice called software and DevOps, and we conduct agile full stack software development. We're working with some of the most innovative programs in the national security space, like the DoD software factories. We also employ what one of our customers referred to as platform engineering ninjas that work to accelerate software development and deployment. Within that practice, we also have data engineers, data scientists, and AI researchers who are actually looking to integrate some of those technologies to help augment and automate the capabilities for our customers. And then lastly, we have a digital transformation practice that really focuses on enterprise IT, as well as some very unique test and evaluation capabilities for some emerging technologies that our national security customers are looking to field. As far as my background, I mentioned that I'm the chief growth officer at Dark Wolf, but I've grown up not only in the national security space but the technology space as well. I've mostly been around software development and related technologies. And then over the last 8 years or so, I've really focused primarily on delivering AI, machine learning, and other related technologies to help support some of our government customers. More specifically, I've spent a lot of time in the media forensics and authentication space, which I know we're going to talk quite a bit about today. And it's just been crazy watching AI become more and more pervasive in that field, and definitely looking forward to talking more about that.
100%, man. I appreciate the overview of Dark Wolf and what you guys do. It's really, really, really cool. I know you have a lot of really, really smart folks working for you, and so obviously we're here talking about a lot of the synthetic media and the
Mhm.
potential societal concerns, national security concerns that come with that. But as we get into that, do you mind just telling me a little bit about some of the different types of generative AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the term generative AI because it's just become such a big part of our technology lexicon. But I remember when I first started working in the field, we were using terms like synthetic data to refer to the type of content generated by these systems. You know, you look at you can look at generative AI from a lot of different lights. I mean, there are different model architectures and techniques, for instance. There's also the different types of data that these models are producing. Uh, you know, I think I probably encountered Gen AI pretty early on. This was probably 2014, 2015, where I saw the initial research into generative adversarial networks or GANs. And I still remember seeing the very early 28 by 28 pixel images of these random faces that were being generated. And now, I mean, you go to these sites like thispersondoesnotexist.com, and that uses NVIDIA's StyleGAN model, like a first generation StyleGAN model. And you have these like very high resolutions of completely synthetically generated faces. It's just kind of amazing to have seen that. There's also things like diffusion models. I spent some time researching those capabilities. I think Dolly too. Dolly's pretty pretty popular out there. I believe that actually leverage diffusion models as well. They're also commonly used for applications like super resolution and style transfer,
Hmm.
image style transfer. And then now, obviously, we're seeing transformer architectures and large language models really being the big craze. I mean, I don't know how many people know this, but GPT actually stands for generative pre-trained transformer. So
Hmm.
it is a transformer architecture. And now these capabilities were really initially focused on natural language processing.
Hmm.
But I think what we're now seeing is that everything is becoming quote unquote multimodal. Multimodal AI is the big thing. That means these models are able to interpret and generate data in different modalities, whether it's images, text, video, audio, and we just saw, uh, interesting that we're recording today. We just saw yesterday that um, ChatGPT 4.0 was released, and the big focus is on its multimodal capabilities. So, I think multimodal is starting to become more and more of the thing today.
Absolutely, and I know you touched on some of the early stages development there around the really early pictures from I guess 2014, 2015, and then I
Yeah.
know this person does not exist, and like I mean I've sat there for 15, 20 minutes and just clicked through to see different people, and I mean it's uncanny, but I saw the just the transformation in the ability to generate videos over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
It's been exponential, and so yeah, as we think about, some of those capabilities we see today, can you talk about some of the speed of development that we've seen over the last few years, but how like and looking forward, where do we even go from here?
Yeah, I mean it's just amazing because it has just been such a short period of time, and it's honestly just for me it's just been a blur. I mean, it just seems like these capabilities have been developing so quickly. Again, we're talking less than 10 years, and we're going from 28 by 28 images all the way to 2048 by 2048 or 4096 by 4096. I mean, that is just amazing to me.
Mhm.
When we look at some of these transformer technologies, I believe some of the transformer stuff came out maybe in 2017 or so.
Mhm.
So it wasn't that long ago that we started messing around with these models, and then all of a sudden here we are today with capabilities like ChatGPT, Bard, and some of these other large language models that are out there. There's a term that we often use in industry, and I think you kind of hit on this, Nick. There's a term that we often use. It's the uncanny valley, which refers to that feeling you get when you look at something and it just feels off.
Mhm.
So you take a movie, for instance, where you might have an actor that recently deceased, and they're trying to reincarnate that character on screen. The uncanny valley is that feeling like something just doesn't feel right about the way that image is rendered. But I think what we're seeing is with these emerging AI technologies, that valley is getting smaller and smaller. And I think over time we're just going to continue to see that. And in 5 years or so, I think these architectures will not only be more sophisticated, but we'll see new, improved, optimized ways and techniques to utilize these technologies.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and I don't remember, I think, is it one of the Star Wars movies I saw relatively recently came out over the last 10 to
Hmm.
15 years
Yep.
with one of the I forget what they called. I think it was like a Grand Moff or whatever. He was like the actor who played it in the original Star Wars had passed away, but they used, I guess it was, I don't know if it was AI or if it was like a body actor that they mapped and then superimposed somebody over it. I mean, it looked like a really high resolution cartoon, but do you think like at what point do you think it will be indistinguishable from actually having a person there? Or are we
I think I think we are very, very close to seeing that now. I think that type of technology, CGI technology, they are all at a point where we are. they are almost becoming indistinguishable.
And how do you think that th- so first, with some of these public facing models like the chat GPTs or Geminis or Claudes or what have you, will they be able to do it with that level of photorealism, or will that take, serious like CGI movie budget dollars to do?
I think we are seeing the barrier of entry getting much more reduced.
Hmm.
Um, we now have deepfake as a service for instance, where you're
Hmm.
able to put someone's face on just about any image or any video. And I mean, is it to that level? Maybe not quite yet, but I think we're just going to continue to see that improve, and it's only a matter of time before it does get to the point where it's very indistinguishable.
Yeah, I was just reading earlier today that I think that somebody said that it's going to change blackmailing as an art, right? Where it's like
Yeah, it's
you look at
crazy.
things like that. I forget which somebody was on, and I can't vouch for the veracity of this claim, but somebody got banned from one of the large the large LLM services because they were using it to generate pictures like photorealistic pictures of politicians cheating on their spouses, right?
Mhm.
And like you can absolutely try to lock that down in the big services all you want, but I mean, how does something like that play into the environment that we live in, and then also in addition to that, what kind of implications do you think that's going to have for people in public facing roles?
Yeah, that is a big question that we're really starting to see with these types of technologies. I mean, without a doubt, uh, these technologies can add tremendous value to society, the world at large.
Mhm.
But and this has just been my perspective, having seen this being done for years, not necessarily using AI, but other techniques that preceded AI
Mhm.
capabilities. You always have to look at the less glamorous side of things. It's I don't think it's anyone's surprise that people are using these technologies for nefarious purposes. I mean, we use the term deepfakes. We still use the term deepfakes,
Mhm.
and as amazing as that technology was when it first came out, I mean, now when you hear the term deepfake, I mean, you have that negative connotation to it. It just, it's just being used for purposes that it was not initially intended to be
Mhm.
used for. You brought up a couple examples there. I mean, we just saw a few weeks ago a Baltimore principal. I don't know if you heard this story, and
I don't think so.
this actually hit close to home because I actually grew up in Baltimore County.
Mhm.
Um, he had his voice used to generate racist and anti-Semitic comments, and
Mhm.
this was all conducted by a former employee of the school, who were basically using these same technologies that are used in things like humanitarian relief efforts.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think we are unfortunately going to see a lot more of that, and I think in a way it will create some distrust, the disinformation that's going to be spread. I do think it's up to folks like myself, having been in that field, to start developing those technologies that can separate the disinformation from uh, the authentic data.
100%. Yeah, no, and I think, I mean, that's tragic. I didn't hear about the principal in Baltimore. Do you know what happened? I assume he's fine. Like it's not like, but it was like an outrage. He didn't lose his job, did
No, no. I mean, I
he?
think luckily they were able to determine that it was synthetically generated, and again, I think there was part of it where audio tends to be one of the latter things. Images are typically easiest.
Mhm.
Text is hard because there's context around text and things like that, and then audio is even harder to really synthetically generate, at least
Mhm.
from what I've seen in my experience. Um, and I think they were able to detect that it was manipulated data. It was
Mhm.
synthetic data. So I don't believe he got into any trouble, but you know it does beg the question about whether or not the laws that we have today are applicable to some of these technologies. Like where does that crime fall?
Mhm.
I don't know for sure. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not an attorney.
Right.
I don't want to speak for attorneys out there, but I think we are starting to see laws and policies being updated to account for some of these technologies, and I think it is a good time that we spend some time to really see whether or not what we have in place is enough to account for what we're seeing from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean it's good that he was able to get out of everything, but I agree that the laws do need to change, right? Like I think you and I spoke about this briefly, but in I want to say it was the New Hampshire primary, somebody set up a robo dialer with President Biden's voice telling people
Hmm.
to go out and vote, right? And things like that where it's I don't know how easy it is to tell whether something's synthetically generated from from the technical side, like when you have the audio file. But like, when you're getting a robocall, which I mean all these politicians do,
Hmm.
and it's telling you no, don't do, and it's giving a message, right? First, I don't know how illegal that is. Second, do you know how easy it is to track something like that? And third, how easy is that to set up and like execute? Because I know I can create a robo dialer on my computer pretty simply.
Yeah, and again, it goes to the barrier of entry is just it's getting reduced. It's
Mhm,
these things are becoming services that are just readily available for people to use, and it is becoming increasingly difficult with this. I always like to equate it to a cat and mouse game, and this cat and mouse game has been going on for a long time.
mhm,
Even before AI really made its way into the mix, where you have these nefarious actors that are seeing these technologies and these techniques come out, they're applying them to their craft, and
mhm,
then you have to have the folks on the other side who are looking to detect that and be able to identify when something has been manipulated or when disinformation is out there and things of that nature. And it's always this catch up game. So
mhm,
it's this again cat and mouse game that we're often seeing there. So I always like to use that kind of
mhm,
analogy to kind of describe what we typically see in the field.
mhm,
Again, when I first started working in kind of media forensics and the authentication field, I uh, a lot of it was just people using Photoshop
mhm,
for images, but now we're seeing AI and that evolution there, and then it's up to those on the other side to really play that catch up game. I do think there are some initiatives that are out there that are really going to help with a lot of this. For instance, I think you and I talked at one point about the content authenticity initiative. This was something that Adobe has been leading up to basically establish that data provenance. So going all the way back to the camera generating the image and understanding any manipulation that has gone on along the way.
mhm,
Really, I mean, one to make sure that what is being put out there is true, but also just to establish that transparency,
yeah.
because I think transparency is another kind of big aspect for it. It's just you take the recent, let's say, scandal from uh, Kate Middleton posting
Mhm,
those images that happen to be manipulated in Photoshop. Now, is that a big deal? Not necessarily, but I think a lot of the outrage was just because there was that lack of transparency that
mhm.
these were not the original images that were taken from the camera.
Yeah, no, 100%. Can you speak a little bit more about, kind of, well, first, do you think that that should be industry driven or government driven first, or should it be a combination of those two? And can you speak a little bit more about, that content authenticity, initiative, kind of what its goals are, and just kind of like also talk a little bit about why Adobe is, I think they're the main one driving it, why they're behind it, and what they're doing in that space.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a partnership. It is a partnership between industry and government. I truly believe it has to be that
Hmm.
that sort of partnership there. And it's funny. Adobe has been driving it. To be completely honest, I had not been keeping up with it as much as I had in the past. But I had a lot of discussions with Adobe about that. And, it is interesting because they are the ones developing the software that helps, manipulation. Photoshop
Mhm.
is one of the most popular tools that are out there. But, I think from their perspective, they understand the ethical reasons and the responsible reasons for participating in something like that, and making sure that data provenance is in place
Mhm.
um, along the way, and again establishing that transparency.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that, man. So, yeah, yeah, what are some of what's some of the difficulties in detecting some of this synthetic media, and what are some of the tools available now that we have? Some of the best and newest tools that we have available to detect this.
Yeah, I think they're the sophistication as well as the rapid improvement.
Hmm.
Um, I think the rapid improvement has really caught everyone by surprise because again, that cat and mouse game is just it just keeps moving, and
Hmm.
it's moving very, very quickly. I mentioned some of the attacks that we've seen. I think you alluded to some of those as well, Nick. We're just seeing more and more sophisticated synthetic media, and it's just improving so quickly. You know, I, One area, I mentioned Dark Wolf, cybersecurity company. We're seeing, for instance, phishing attempts. You're no longer seeing like the poor grammar in the emails that you're getting. So they're becoming, even those are becoming, more and more closer to looking like they're authentic data. Um, yeah, I I know this
Go ahead.
has been true. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, 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 no. Please go ahead, man. Tell me about some of these. Go. Please finish your point.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was just going to say there's obviously this big push for responsible and ethical AI, which there has to be.
Hmm.
I think there's been a reckoning coming for quite a long time, and that applies not only to generative AI but AI use in general. I do think it's also incumbent upon society at large to really help better understand some of these emerging technologies and specifically how they can be used as they're not going away, and we'll continue to see the use of them.
Yeah, no, and one of the things that I like, so folks like, you and I who are up on the industry, obviously you a little bit more, I hope a lot more than me. And who pay attention and like understand some of the developments and all the new things that are coming out. Um, I think it'll be a little easier for us to, understand and grasp like the content authenticity and that everything is going to be faked. The things that worry me personally are the frankly, the older folks, right? The people or the less technically proficient people, right? I think like, older people in general are far more susceptible to things like this because I don't know if maybe they just weren't, it wasn't something that they ever conceived of as a possibility when they were younger. And
Hmm.
I mean, like they're the ones that have taken over Facebook largely, and and you look at how fast things like this can spread. And also you look at who votes in larger numbers, right? And as we are in an election year, that's something that's ever present on my mind is like, what kind of, what are the implications here? And when you look at the last couple of presidential election cycles and how they've really, risen, and they've all really flipped on like a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand votes in a few counties here and there. And it doesn't take that much to put your finger on the scale at this point with where we are. And those are the things that kind of keep me up at night, Oliver, is like, it's just what's going on and what's going to happen as this continue to develop.
Yeah, you and I both, Nick. You know, I, I, I think obviously we have to continue to be vigilant as a society at large,
Mhm.
because again, that's something that we often say in cybersecurity. Be vigilant,
Mhm.
or vigilant. Sorry,
Mhm.
vigilant.
Yeah.
Be vigilant.
Mhm.
But I think it certainly applies here as well. I do think that there needs to be more of a education campaign out there, just so we understand the the extent that some of these capabilities can exert
Mhm.
within society. I don't think a lot of people really, kind of realize that they can contribute to disinformation quite a bit. And I think we're starting to see more and more of that, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, I mean, does it keep me up at night? Yeah, I think there are definitely some valid concerns there, and I think uh, as a society we can do our part to just make sure that some of these don't affect things like elections. But honestly, I I think we can certainly do more.
Yeah. And I mean, as like, I play a CTO on TV for one of my other companies. And one of the biggest concerns always with things like phishing attacks is like and with and we're it's a mental health company, right? And so we're at like healthcare companies are big targets for things like that. Employees are your weakest link. Always, right? They're the
Hmm.
ones that'll click the link that'll let you into the system. They're the ones that will allow largely a lot of the time because it doesn't matter how impregnable of a firewall you build around an organization if
Sure.
you have somebody that just doesn't read or doesn't know any better and maybe they didn't do a great job on their last phishing and phishing training and they went through remedial training, or maybe there's somebody that just like is having a bad day and just didn't read. And then how do you think we can go about and then they click a link and then all of a sudden you have you're shut down with a ransomware attack, as so many of these large hospitals and large healthcare providers and cities have had happen to them. As I mean, one of the reasons I wanted you on this is because of your background in cybersecurity. So how do you think we can prevent about what do you think we as how do you think we should go about educating people? Where do you start and how can we because if we're still struggling with things like phishing attacks with misspellings and email addresses that are way off, but they've spoofed the name, like how would you even start a campaign like that and start the education?
Yeah, I mean, we that's a really great question. I mean, I I think we I think for one, I give a lot of I give a lot of props to some of the vendors that are generating these larger models and
Mhm,
these generative AI technologies, because they have been doing an incredible job putting some guards
mhm,
in place to make sure that people are not using them in a nefarious manner. And I think that is important. That's going to continue to be important. And this is again where it comes to that partnership between industry as well as government.
mhm.
Those who are developing these types of technologies should have a responsibility to put some of those guards in place. So that's one area where I think we can certainly start. Um, I actually have not seen a lot of training or uh, that type of thing when it comes to generative AI. And I do think there is an opportunity out there to start developing some of that training, making employees have to go through that type of
Mhm,
training, similar to how they do from a cybersecurity perspective. I mean, yes, things do slip through the cracks. I think it's inevitable that some of that happens.
mhm,
Even as you mentioned in the cybersecurity realm. But I do think that these trainings, forcing employees to go through that training when they start, um, renewing every year, making sure they understand the latest cyber attacks that are
mhm.
that are that are out there, is effective. And I do think we can do the same thing for some of these technologies as well.
I agree, man. When you have your fourth practice area of Dark Wolf Solutions doing trainings, I want you to credit me with the idea,
There you go.
man.
There you go. Yep, absolutely.
Because it's 100% right, and, like, I don't know if, like, with generative AI specifically, I don't know if an annual training would be enough because of the pace of the development, right?
That's true. Yep.
And so, I think there's absolutely a huge market out there for providing trainings like that. Where you're actually taking the folks that the ethical hackers and, the folks that you have on on your staff and understanding, not just because like, we don't just have annual trainings. In addition to that, I also actively run, I actively run phishing campaigns on my employees, right? And I do
Yep,
that
we
because
do too. Yeah.
yeah, you have to, right? Because you need, and then everybody that clicks and falls for it, they all go back through remedial training because that's the only way. Because I've had people in my organization over the years who, we haven't had any like true cyber breaches or data breaches, but I've had people go out and literally go out and buy gift cards because people they thought somebody was telling them to, and then sent the cards and like, they just lost $1,000, right? And it's you feel bad for folks, right? And it's terrible, but like I feel like it's incumbent on the individual to do a better job of understanding and screening and looking at things, right? But I also think it's incumbent on the organization to continue to train people. And so, because I think that like, yes, the feeling you were talking about earlier, where something's just like not quite there from a realism perspective, we're absolutely 100%. I think folks that are paying attention are going to be able to see that faster, but I am not sure how to quantitatively train somebody to do that. I just don't,
Yeah.
you know?
It's and for better or worse, I think the big appeal, why we saw generative AI become such an impressive technology that um that people have adopted is for its accessibility.
Hmm.
People continue to find new and different ways to use it, use those types of technologies, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Bard or whatever.
Hmm.
We're just finding new and new ways to use it, and I think that is definitely one thing that makes things very challenging. Is that people are applying it to things that you wouldn't even think to apply it to,
Yeah.
and I think we'll continue to see that. But we've got to do something. We've got to start somewhere. I think
100%.
education is definitely one place to start. Make
Hmm.
sure the public generally knows what these technologies are capable of, and you hope that they get to a point where they are able to make the right decisions when it comes to how these technologies are used.
I completely agree. And so, what do you think some of the ethical implications here are and around around some of this incredibly realistic synthetic media? For one, and two, what do you think how do you think that this continued push to to flood the market with synthetic media will negatively affect trust in media?
I mean, you can certainly look at ethics from a lot of different angles when it comes to that to this type of data. I mean, we're already saying, where's the data coming from?
Hmm.
Is that really publicly available information that's being ingested, or um, is there other information being ingested there? I mean, that's just one angle of it. In terms of the actual ethical use, again, I go back to having that partnership with industry, those that are developing these technologies, to take some time to put some of those guardrails in place.
Hmm.
I think it is a way to start, in terms of making sure that um, that barrier of entry is, that they raise that barrier of entry so that way people can't be using them for nefarious purposes.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, ethics. There are a lot of different roads you can go down, when it comes to ethical use of these technologies, and again, it is it is just interesting to see how many different applications people are using it for, and I think depending on those different applications, we might be able to go down different thoughts about the ethics using it for those types of applications. So it's yeah, I think ethical AI is definitely a field in and of itself that is definitely kind of emerging as we're seeing these technologies develop.
100%. Yeah, I think one of the things that you touched on that I find most interesting is the data, the underlying data, right? Where are you
Yeah.
getting that? Just like how there's like sustainable, like you go to the grocery store and you see like sustainable, supply chain stickers and things
Mhm.
on. Like, I'm curious how is that going to how does data sustainability really, how are things like that in the data supply chain gonna play into it? And I know some interesting companies that are doing they work in the space where they go out and verify supply chains to resell data to some of the folks that you're working with, right? And it's just fascinating. It's big, especially for the customers that you deal with, right?
Yeah, and one area that I just haven't had enough energy to really think through is as as more and more of the synthetic data gets generated and becomes more and more part of the data that's available out there, do we start creating almost like a bias towards synthetic data? I know we've seen some of that with some other capabilities, but I do wonder if there's going to be a point where some of that synthetic data is starting to influence the actual data that's in there because we continuously generate it. It's a thought experiment that I haven't had the energy to really think through, but
Mhm.
it there's much smarter people than myself to kind of think through that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like it becomes a feedback loop, right? Where the synthetic data informs the model, and then the model creates more of the data, and
it
it's
it creates is there a potential for model bias? I don't know for
right.
sure, but
Mhm.
yeah,
Fascinating. Yeah, man, really cool. And so where do you think, for where do you think, some of the future is, when you talk about the future and where we're going, right? What do you think, where do you think some of the biggest areas for development are going to be over the next couple years?
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can even talk 5 to 10 years out because of the amount of variables over the next couple.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very hard to talk 5, 10 years out. I mean, I think we'll start seeing some vast improvements over the next few years. You know, I kind of alluded this before. For better or worse, we're seeing the application of these technologies in a lot of different areas. Some use cases that we haven't really thought of in the past. Related to that, I'd really love to see some of these technologies they already are, but I'd
Hmm.
love to continue to see these technologies really help reshape things like the medical field. From research all the way to developing assistive technologies for those who need it.
Hmm.
Uh, Looking at the technical side of things, we'll certainly see the accuracy of the data improving. We didn't talk about it much, but there's the quote unquote hallucination problem that
Hmm.
some of these models start to run into. And I think we'll start to see that definitely improve. One area that I think is going to be pretty significant is when we start seeing an optimization of the inference of these capabilities. So inference being how quickly we get responses back, and not only from the standpoint of speed, but
Hmm.
also compute power. A
Hmm.
lot of these a lot of these models require large GPUs to run. We're getting smaller and smaller. We can run them on CPUs. We'll start, being able to optimize these for different hardware, and I think that then becomes really interesting as far as like integration into autonomous systems and things of that nature. So I do think that is probably going to be in the horizon.
Really cool, man. I appreciate that. And then, from what as somebody who sits as in this cat and mouse game, as for a living, what advice do you have for both consumers and professionals as we continue to navigate this world?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. Definitely education. These technologies aren't going away.
Mhm.
And I grew up in the '80s, so as GI Joe used to say, knowing is half the battle.
Mhm.
I definitely believe that. So education will be of huge benefit to all of society. That way, we can better understand these technologies and how they can be used. Um, both both for good as well as bad. You know, I also think part of that is we're already seeing these technologies affect the economy, the job market. we talked. I mentioned a little bit about prompt engineer
Mhm.
now being a hot job,
Right.
but I think we're also seeing these technologies influence other fields, everything from software engineering to
Mm.
cashier services.
Right.
They're all kind of being affected by these technologies, and I think understanding how to use them and use them to augment your field is just becoming increasingly important.
I completely agree, and, one of the things that I find interesting and just as I kinda play it through is, like, folks like you and I mean, growing up in school, like, you had to write a paper. You actually had to write the paper, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, but also, and to what does that have from an effect perspective on kids growing up today as a father of a young daughter? Is she never gonna have to learn how to coherently write because there are models out there that can do it for her? But also, what does that do for things like, being able to code, and how
Hmm.
software, from a software engineer perspective, if I'm like, how will that, if we're able to augment a team of senior and mid-level engineers to just essentially, instead of having to write all the code themselves, be able to just edit and rework and work with code that is, already there. How does that speed things up? But then also, thinking about from a talent pipeline perspective, what does that do to the junior engineers now who will never ever have to code something from the ground up? Yeah.
We're yeah, we're seeing things change just
Mhm,
so quickly. And again, it's affecting a lot of different fields. And
mhm.
I think just having to understand how that transformational shift happens is just important for everyone.
100%, man. And, Oliver, before we sign off, just wanna give you an opportunity. Anything else you'd like to say or mention, or anything that you wanted to say that, we just kinda missed?
No, I think we covered a lot of topics today, Nick, and I
Mhm.
really appreciate the time here.
Yeah, Oliver, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It's been an amazing chat. I learned a lot, and I hope, everybody else that's listening does too.